everybody. It is Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome. Welcome back to another episode of The Old, the New, and the Awesome, this time from May 2022. I am really glad to be back. I feel like I've been away from this for far too long. Of course, you all know the reasons as to why. And I'm just really looking forward to having a great conversation with some adults for the next couple of hours. But before we get going into the new episode, I just want to give my co-hosts here, Gina, Cammie, and Stacy, a massive thank you for keeping this ship sailing while I was dealing with the birth of my new baby, my new daughter, who is absolutely adorable. And I am just so happy that you guys had such an amazing time on your on the show without me. And I had no issues with anything that you guys were talking about, even the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial, because believe me, my wife and I are sort of on and off talking about it too. And I'm sick and tired of those muffins too. But I'm waiting for that trial to finally end because I just want to see something happen. But anyway, something else I want to mention. While I've been away, I have actually seen The Batman and Turning Red, and you guys can go on this channel to see my reviews for my Turning Red review, as well as over at That's Comical for the Batman review. But yeah, it's definitely been a very interesting couple of weeks, and I'm just glad to be back. So hello to the three of you. It's great to see you guys again.
Hi.
Yeah. Gina, sorry. Yeah. And Gina, sorry about the Blues.
6 seconds and we would have been in overtime. Ugh.
No, do you think that's frustrating? The fact that the Rangers are going into Game 7 as we speak, like if they blow it, because they do this every goddamn time they're in the playoffs. I hate it with a passion.
Yep.
But that's also the same reason why we love being Rangers fans. What can I tell you? But hey, listen, it's just good to know that you guys finally got your Stanley Cup much more recently, and I've still been waiting for one since 1994 because all my other sports teams can't win anything. So
True.
So, Cammie, how have you been doing?
Good. Staying busy. Just kind of prepping for the little one for the summer.
Nice.
He's going to be here in 2 weeks, so I'm just kind of categorizing my space. I mean, he's pretty good about my stuff. He knows my stuff isn't like for play, and then I buy him all his Legos and Hot Wheels and stuff like that. So, but that, and I get bored of my space pretty easily. I mean, even though I know it probably looks the same to you guys every time you look behind me, but I did rearrange all this stuff again, and I'm about ready to do it again. I just get bored. But yeah, everything is good. Life is good, and I'm excited to talk about lots of new things that I've been doing this month.
For sure. How about yourself, Stacy? How have you been?
What?
I said, how have you been?
Good. May was a crazy busy month for me with the boy graduating, and he had a lot of like award ceremonies and things that we had to go to. So he turned out to be much smarter than we realized, and that's cool. So it's been busy. Good.
Yeah. I was actually able to, one of the few things I was really glad about was I didn't think I was going to be able to, but I actually was able to participate in Free Comic Book Day this year because that was the original due date of my daughter. She was 3 days late. So it would have been really cool to have a Free Comic Book Day baby because then she totally would have 100% been my daughter for many, many other reasons. We were also very glad to see that we didn't get any birthday overlap. She was born 2 days before my wife's birthday. So we actually celebrated my wife's birthday at the hospital. So
Aww.
She got a cupcake, which was really nice from the nursing staff. And, I gave her a nice birthday card and, a new daughter, best present ever, right? So I think it's finally time to get into that hot topic that we have been pushing off for so long. And I think it's a more appropriate time to do so because apparently an extra dimension just actually took place regarding this topic. And that was the topic of banning books. There was a big controversy very recently about some schools in the Midwest banning the Art Spiegelman graphic novel Mouse. But there's been a new book that's come under fire in regards to this whole banning book trend, and that is the book called Genderqueer. I can understand the reason why that kind of a book, people would basically say that this is not necessarily appropriate for children. And I mean, it makes sense to me, but I just really find it interesting how there are some people that say that if you want to ban that book from young minds and eyes, you're classifying that you are against the LGBTQ community. I don't understand that. But Cammie, this was a topic that you really wanted to bring to the forefront. So I really want you to try and lead on this conversation and give us a little bit more of an insight into where we can actually go from here.
And I also realized I didn't intentionally grab this mug, but this is all like books, most of which are banned, by the way. I don't know how I do this all the time. I swear to goodness, I didn't plan this one. But no, it's a subject that's near and dear to my heart because, of course, you guys know that collectively, I think we all, with the exception of Gina, because Gina's our newbie, but we all got together through books. You know, that's how we met each other, and through the book community, through the YouTube platform. And I've been an avid reader my entire life. I held my first cloth book in my hands at 8 months old. So books are very, very important to me, and I've watched my sister become a reader. I've watched her kids become readers. So when the subject of banned books comes up, I always kind of gravitate to what is on the hit list. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to make this a hot button topic was because I think that despite the number of readers that are out there and that I follow on various social platforms, I don't think a lot of people really talk about the number of books that get banned every year. And I think that's important as part of the discussion. You know, we want to highlight, obviously, the one that everyone's talking about. This year, it happens to be 2, as Steve pointed out, for different reasons. But about 250 books a year get banned from schools and school curriculum. So that's a lot in the scope of reading and what is accepted and not accepted, I guess, in, you know, terms of what can go in our kids' hands. I am not a biological parent, but I am a step parent. So I've had arguments with biological parents in this regard before. I don't believe in censorship. I don't believe in telling an individual, regardless of age, what they should and shouldn't read. I think one of the most heartbreaking things for me as a bookseller in my adult life was having young children come to me saying that their parents didn't support some of the subjects that they wanted to read or some of the books that they were interested in without even having gave them a chance, just because, you know, something might be a little bit questionable. Captain Underpants comes to mind. Okay, grown man in his underpants, yeah, that should cause a red flag. But what does it mean? Is it funny? And it is, you know, I mean, he's under a hypnotic spell. He's wearing a ring, a decoder ring that was found in a cereal box, and he's fighting crime. So, you know, a lot of the things that we immediately react to, we're not doing our research behind the scenes as parents. And so when we come to things a little bit more heavy hitting, like Mouse, which obviously is about the Holocaust, it's a moment in time. It's our history. And if we're banning our children from reading about historical moments from a child's perspective, then we're not doing our children a service. We're doing them a disservice. I don't want to speak too deeply about gender queer other than what research I've done on it, because obviously it's not a book that I've read. But the area of issue with most parents was that there was some sexual stories that were shared, from what parents are saying, very explicit sexual innuendos between couples in this book, and they didn't feel it was appropriate. I am all for parental control. As long as a child lives in your home and you are the parent and or guardian until that child leaves your home, you make the decisions in that home. So if you feel that that book is not worthy of your child's eyes, fine. But I can also understand the uproar from the wow, this is going to be fun for me to say today, the LGBTQ plus community. There we go, third time's a charm. Yeah. Because the argument is that there are so few books that are out there for children making that sexual exploration, and regardless of what age you feel is normal. I mean, think about it. Think about when the change starts to happen to your body. Think about when the questions start to develop. I remember hearing my first sexual joke in the 3rd grade. I didn't know what it meant, but obviously my buddy, you know, was a little bit more advanced or had a little bit more exposure around his household. And so I think that stifling a child's curiosity is also dangerous, because you're making it seem like being gay or being queer is wrong. At least that's the way I see it. So, you know, I mean, this opens up, and that in itself is a whole other topic, and that's really not what we're focusing on here. But this is why, going back to my original point, I feel that censorship is so dangerous, because again, are we doing the full research before we just judge a book literally by its cover or by its title? Are we allowing our children to express to us why this book is important to them, or why they have an interest in reading it? Are we having those family conversations with our kids nowadays? And I don't think that's happening. And, you know, furthermore, in terms of banned books as a whole, you know, what are we doing as a community to really rally around these books? Are we looking at these lists annually and saying, hey, why is this book getting banned? Are we pushing back on our libraries and our school districts and our school board meetings and asking these heavy hitting questions? And I don't think that we are. Now, do we have time to visit 250 plus books a year? No, that's unrealistic. But think about how many books have ended up on these lists that we're still reading today. And I read a really funny excerpt from an author that said, you know, man, what I wouldn't give to have my book put on a banned book list, because what it does for sales.
Yeah.
And, you know, things like that are a positive and a negative, but it does lead way for a basis of a bigger conversation. And so as a book enthusiast and what I consider to myself to be a bookworm, I think it's important to talk about this in a book community and amongst other book readers, because we're all going to have different points of view and different perspectives. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, I don't disagree with you at all. I don't disagree with you at all. I definitely agree with where you're coming from in regards to parental consent. I mean, to me, there's a very big difference between saying that I don't feel that my child can read this book as opposed to I don't think that anybody should be reading this book. There's a very big difference. I mean, you just got to be if you want to make sure that your children are reading things that you deem appropriate, that's absolutely fine. It's like, you know, there are people that are going to not let their kids watch a PG-13 movie until they're maybe 10 or 11, and then there are people that are going to bring their 6-year-olds into a rated R movie in a movie theater because they can't find a babysitter and they just don't care. But, you know, a book like Mouse, you know, I started learning about the Holocaust going to a private school for Jewish kids. I started learning about the Holocaust when I was 7. Now, did our teacher tell us to go and read Mouse? No, she didn't. But when we started to get a little bit older and really know that something like the Holocaust was going to be something that we were going to be discussing every single year, you know, that's when some books that were appropriate for our age started to come into our curriculums at school, like Number the Stars, for example. Mouse was a book that I actually read in college in a Holocaust literature class, but there were a lot of kids when I was in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade reading Mouse, and that's an appropriate time to read that. But, you know, you take a look at other things in regards to the reasoning behind these books, like people don't want kids to read The Adventures of Huck Finn because there are some bad words, and we know what those words are that are in the pages of those books. There are so many people that have been for years banning books like Catcher in the Rye for reasons that some people just find that book absolutely disgusting. But it doesn't, I don't agree with the fact that a book should be banned because I feel that because I don't want to read it because I feel that it's inappropriate, nobody is allowed to read that book. I don't agree with that at all. And in regards to a book like Genderqueer, you know, based on what I've been hearing about that book, I wouldn't want a very, very young kid to read it if it has some graphic image depiction in that book. But, you know, I'm not saying that there can't be a book that is more child-friendly in regards to topics like that. It's not that difficult to do. I just feel that, especially when it comes to a sensitive area like LGBTQ, you know, there are some people that say that unless there is a sex scene in there between various types of genders, it's not LGBTQ enough. I don't agree with something like that, you know? I feel that to show those kinds of people in books, the best way to show them is them just being regular human beings, because that's the best way that anybody can be represented in a book correctly. And that's also, you know, people like us, we're all big fans of popular culture. We don't care how diverse your cast is as long as the story is great. You know, Cammie and I always go back to a comic book that we love to death, The Department of Truth. The main character is a gay man married to another man, but the story is great. So the fact that it's a gay man and not a straight man, that's this main character, I don't care. The story's phenomenal. That's all that I care about.
And I think there was a lot of push on authors. You saw a lot of it during lockdown, during the pandemic, of, you know, people being keyboard warriors talking about what people should and shouldn't be doing. And I think there was a lot of push during that period, or maybe it was just more prevalent to me because I had more time on my hands, but where people were encouraging authors to be more diverse intentionally. And when you're forcing it, your audience is going to sense that. Your audience is not
You can
going to
tell.
sense that your characters are genuine.
There's
You know,
there's a few books that I've read like within the last couple of years. I can't really remember off the top of my head, but like reading them, I would send messages to one of my friends and been like, you can tell they're trying too hard to be diverse. Like when every other page is like, oh, this person is this race and has this haircut and is this sexuality, like that's too much. Like you don't need that. Like if it's genuine, you can tell.
Exactly.
Like, just put it into the story. It does not need to be
right. I mean,
explained to death.
I mean, like, one of the things that I was going to talk about today is the final season of Grayson Frankie, a Netflix show that is about two women who were married, and it turned out that both of their husbands fell in love with each other and they got married. I thought that the idea was absolutely brilliant. And the show is hilarious. The cast of that show, Lily Tomlin is a riot. Jane Fonda plays off of her beautifully. And Martin Sheen and Sam Waterston, two straight men. And Lily Tomlin happens to be a gay woman playing a straight woman. You know, I love the fact that these actors are portraying people that are not them. They're completely out of their comfort zone, and they've done a brilliant job for all these years. I absolutely appreciate a show like that. Like, again, this is a show about LGBTQ people, and I have no issue with it because it's written well, the actors are stellar, and that's what makes a great show, regardless of how non or how diverse your cast is.
Well, and as a reader and or watcher, regardless of how you're taking in your media, it's also a slap in the face to you as the consumer when an author goes above and beyond to over accentuate a character's sexuality or description, because they're dumbing you down. They're saying, oh, you're not going to get this if I don't give you the ABCs of this individual. And it's like, that makes it very uncomfortable for me, because it's almost like you're forcing that character down my throat. Why don't you write it more naturally? Why don't you allow me to enjoy this character and pick out the parts and pieces that I love? Because isn't that how we fall in love with imaginary people, is by allowing the certain attributes that just kind of stand out and hit us and like, oh my God, I fell in love with this about this character. And regardless if they're straight, bi, or gay, whatever the case may be, it makes it a beautiful thing to just love a person for who they are inside. I mean, isn't that the basis of what we teach children the foundation. Don't love people for what they look like or what they sound like or how much money their parents make or, you know, how they come dressed to school. Love them for their kindness, their compassion, because they play with you on the playground, because you genuinely enjoy their company. I think we kind of got away from that. And I do think we are, as a society, getting back to that. It's a very slow crawl, but 2020 and 21 annihilated us as individuals. It divided us so deeply and so vastly that we are just kind of breathing from that again. You know, we're kind of just coming into our own sense of, okay, I can breathe again. I can be who I was before all of this happened. But, you know, obviously you're gonna have a different perspective because it did open our eyes to a lot of things. But I think even prior to 2020, if you were awake in any capacity, a lot of these things weren't surprising. You already knew all these things were going on, you know? And again, I feel that for a lot of these social injustice warriors, it was a slap in the face to everyday people that have been social advocates. But just because we weren't advertising it on all of our social platforms or creating banner-sized messages for the world to see, you can be a silent advocate and make ripples and waves. You know, you can make change by donating to organizations or going and donating your time without advertising every second on social media that you're doing something for an organization or for an individual. You know, I've done a lot of things that nobody knows about, and I don't care if they ever find out, because I'm not looking for a pat on the back or glorification or a participation ribbon. I'm just doing things because that's what we're supposed to do as people. We're supposed to help other people. We're supposed to be there for people in crisis or non-crisis situations. You know, that's just humanity as a whole. So, you know, books to me have always been a form of an escape also. And I think that when you put such heavy hitting material in books constantly and put those in the forefront of reading lists, you need to be reading this, you need to be, you know, talking about this, you're taking away from the joy of reading. You're telling people that there's only one type of book you can read now. There's only one type of book you can review and talk about. And I think that kind of leads us down this very dangerous and dark path. And then we start banning books that people don't agree with, that people see as problematic. I fucking hate that word, problematic.
Oh yeah, me too. I can't stand it.
Well, on anyone else's tongue. It's the worst word that has ever been created and pushed by social media, because you're going to find problems in everything, regardless of where you stand. And it's okay for something or someone to be flawed. That's what makes us human. And when we stop embracing humanity for what it is, we are creating this cookie cutter perfect world that doesn't exist in books. And yes, there are genres such as fantasy, which these types of things take place, but even in a high epic fantasy, you still have flawed characters. You still have people that, despite their ability and their quest to save the world or to win a war, they're still going to make mistakes. So, you know, I know this is kind of an all around way of talking about banning books, but I think it all works into play, because when we get to a place of banning the book, we have thought about all of these things. We have put a lot of time, energy, and effort, or in some cases not. I think sometimes too, you get people who are just so angry about the way something appears to be, or what their idea of what a title might express, that they say, oh no, we can't have this, we can't have this in the hands of our children. And then you blatantly ask them, well, have you read it? Do you know what it's about? You know, and a lot of the times you get a flat out, no, I don't, but I don't want my kids reading it. That's just ignorant, you know?
I mean, I agree with you. I definitely will agree that one of the few things that a lot of people are saying is the fact that people are really upset over the fact that they can't seem to escape anymore, because people are shoving their politics into everything right now. I mean, I said this a long time ago. It's like the minute politics found its way into sports, I got really, really angry. Like, I can't even enjoy sports anymore because now it's all coming down to pay gaps and racist gestures and whatnot. It's scary. And on top of that, I think we are getting better, Cammie, because I think we're all uniting because we're all angry about high gas prices and grocery prices right now. I think
But that in
yeah,
of
you know,
itself,
so-
Steve, is so fucking humorous to me because all these social injustice warriors that were telling us Biden is the end all be all. I'm just like, are you tired of him now? Did we not say this shit was coming? Did we not say this administration was gonna fuck up the world? No politician is better than any politician before them. They are all self-absorbed, self-involved, pretentious assholes that are in it for themselves. And when the world starts to recognize that, it doesn't matter if you're red, blue, or fucking purple, I don't care. It's not about the individual. It is about their motives. And nobody with any kind of common sense understood that all of this was predicted. The high gas prices, the closing of gas lines, it's just, it baffles
It's hilarious.
me, the level of stupidity. But even though I'm suffering because of, high everything right now,
You're glad that it's happening because you want them to eat their words.
Well, and you don't want anybody to suffer, but the fact of the matter is we're all suffering right now. But I just think it's fucking hilarious that someone like me, who was basically bashed and put into a corner because I publicly announced that I voted for Trump again, I was the bad guy. But yeah, your fucking president's doing wonders for the world right now.
Oh, believe me, I am running all over my neighborhood saying I'm voting Republican for the midterm elections. I have no shame in that. I love the fact that I apparently had a hand-me-down for my daughter, a little red onesie that said, "I cry less than liberals." And thank God it's going to fit her come election day. And my wife actually gave me permission to let her wear it on that day. So I will be going to my voting booth with my shirt that says "You are very fake news" on it with my daughter, and I'm just going to watch either people appreciate it or just start falling on the floor and throwing temper tantrums because I'm actually triggering them. It's going to be I'm just saying, I don't think I've ever been more excited for election day until now. I'm really curious what's going to happen. But anyway, I want to know from Stacy because I'll join you on this conversation. So you also just saw the Batman, and what did you think of it?
Didn't like it. Did not like it. I thought it was flat. I was bored. They did a lot of telling and not showing. I was not connected with any character. I didn't care about any person. Yeah, I think Christopher Nolan just raised the bar so high with his Batman movies that it just didn't compare. And in my mind, I'm like, why waste 3 hours of my life I'll never get back watching something that's not as good as The Dark Knight Rises? So,
I mean, I personally thought that it was a good movie, but as a Batman movie, I didn't care for it because the problem with these movies, and unfortunately I say the same thing about the Nolan films, as great as they are, there's no fantasy in those movies. Batman is a superhero. There has to be fantasy in those movies, which is why I love what Zack Snyder does with these characters. The Marvel films also, they really bring those comic book elements into their stories. Unfortunately, you could have slapped a noir anything on this Batman film, and it still would have been well casted, well acted, beautiful cinematography, incredible score. It's the same way that I felt about The Joker. It's a great movie, but it didn't have to be a movie about a Batman villain because it didn't feel like a Batman movie to me. It was a great movie.
It's very detective-y.
Batman movie.
I cared about Bane when I heard when I saw, Bane talking about the backstory of, the pit in that world that, you know, the child
Yeah.
was in and trying to climb out of that pit, it gave me a chance to connect and care, even though Bane was the bad guy. But in this one, it was like, oh, I was just a poor orphan and I don't like rich people. And I'm like, okay, that's that turns you into a murderous maniac. Like, I was poor too. It just pissed me off.
Well,
I didn't like it.
See, with me and
I didn't
Christopher,
like it.
with me and Christopher Nolan's films, I really love those films, but I got to admit, I hate Christian Bale as Batman because I don't like the bat growl. I just find that so annoying.
I didn't like. I know it's supposed to be like a younger, edgier Batman, but I didn't like his whole like emo vibes.
I
Like,
agree. He brooded too much.
I'm
He
like,
didn't
okay.
when he was Bruce Wayne, he didn't put on that flashy, you know, footloose and fancy free, not necessarily playboy attitude, but
Yeah.
he didn't come off as a good Bruce Wayne for me, which is why I always keep saying Ben Affleck was the best combination of the two. I think that when it comes to Christian Bale, he's a much better Bruce Wayne than he is a Batman.
I also feel like this movie was trying to be The Crow. I got a lot of Crow vibes, and I was like, this is not The Crow. The Crow stands alone. You cannot copy it. This is bullshit. And the whole thing made me mad. I was so angry. I saw it with my kids. The next morning, I was still bitching about it. And my son was like, are you really still complaining? I was like, yes, I'm still complaining.
Sounds like me when I saw The Last Jedi. But Gina, speaking of a comic book movie, I'm really upset that I couldn't see it in theaters, but I'm really excited to the point where I actually spoiled myself. You saw Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah,
Let me just say, everything that I have spoiled myself on, I'm excited to see it regardless. It
I
looks
want to see it
fun.
too.
I really liked it. I know people are having issues with it, and like the more I think on it and the more I talk to people and the more questions people have, the more I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of questions and a lot of like, I think they're relying too much on the multiverse to excuse the poor storytelling.
Will there
But
be a third one?
There could be. There
could
definitely
be.
could be.
Okay.
Based
It's
on what I'm
possible.
hearing.
The post-credit scene definitely sets up some stuff that could be another Doctor Strange, or it could lead into other stuff. But it was really fun, and Wanda's just one of my favorites, and seeing her go dark was just a lot of fun for me, so I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
But
and I mean, I personally love the fact that from what I'm hearing, people who are Sam Raimi fans, they say there's a lot of Sam Raimi in that movie, especially towards the end, because they say that there are some parts of this movie that get really uber creepy.
Oh,
and that's great. And that's Sam Raimi. I mean,
I
Yeah.
never thought he was involved in this.
he directed it.
I had no idea. Evil Dead is one of my favorite movies ever.
And it took me such a long time to finally see the original Evil Dead. And I will say, even though I am not the biggest, I think right now, yes, Cammie, I am a horror fan, but more so a horror fan in regards to comic books rather than movies. But I will say that Evil Dead changed me in regards to the way horrors are made. That movie is just wow.
Did you see Army of Darkness?
Yes. I watched that and Killer Clowns from Outer Space in one night.
Killer Clowns from Outer Space is fun.
Those are just
Yeah.
flat
That's
out
a fun movie.
fun movies, you know?
Yeah, it definitely has a lot of dark moments. And I was talking to a coworker who's like very religious, and he did not appreciate how dark it got. And I'm like, that's fair from your standpoint. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Well, that's the thing. I have been saying to people that ever since Captain America and the Winter Soldier, the Marvel movies never got dark again. If what you're saying is true, then yes, it makes me even more excited. You know?
It is very, very, it gets pretty dark.
Because speaking of dark and Marvel, I mean, you and I also watched Moon Knight.
I have watched the first 3 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched the last 3 episodes. I'm not feeling it. I'm not into it.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, Moon Knight is a name that I have known about for many, many years. though I never actually read a comic book until last year when they just started a brand new run. There's a person who's writing it. His name is Jed McKay. I love him as a comic writer because he has just fun with what he writes. And so I wanted to read Moon Knight just to finally get a little understanding of his character. And I read the first story arc, the first 6 issues, and I loved it. And I didn't read any further because I thought the first story arc ended so perfectly. I didn't need to read anymore. But no, I'm with you. I mean, I love Oscar Isaac. He's a great actor. Love him. But I think that this could have been done a little bit better, I think. I think it lacked something.
The first episode doesn't hook you like most of the other things, and like
it keeps you guessing.
It's too much. It does. It keeps you guessing too much. Like it doesn't take until episode 2 that you understand what's happening, which I feel like, I don't know. They should have had some way of connecting it a little bit better, because like the whole first episode, I'm like, I don't understand. I don't care. Like I didn't care about the characters at all. And so there's 3 episodes I have left. I told a friend, I was like, who hasn't started watching it yet, I'm like, if you start watching it, let me know. I'll watch the last 3 episodes with you, because otherwise I'm probably not going to watch them.
Well, speaking of shows that people have been really excited for, Stranger Things is finally back, and I still have to watch it. But,
I watched all of them over the weekend. I
only
started
watched
Friday
the
night.
first 2 episodes so far, but I love it.
They're so
I love
long.
Stranger Things. It must feel so great to finally get to see these characters again after so many years of just waiting on bated breath for the show to come back.
See, that's the thing.
I
We've
love
waited
it.
so long that like I almost don't care anymore
lot of people
because
say
we've
that.
waited so long. But I watched it anyway because I'm like, well, I have to know. I'm like getting back into it and seeing all the characters again. It's like, okay, yeah, I remember why I really love the show. And I don't like what Netflix is doing now with the whole, oh, we're gonna give you almost every episode, but then wait 2 months for the last ones. Like, just give me all of them. That's your shtick. Don't
That's
change
why
it
I'm
now.
spreading it out. I've only watched 2 episodes, and I'm like, I kind of want to take my time, so I'm not like waiting.
Yeah, that's fair.
Ugh.
Because it definitely ends with a huge cliff. Like,
It's so good.
obviously, because they want you to come back for the last 2 episodes, which are movie length long.
There's going to be another season, right? Next summer.
I think so. Season 5 is the last.
Season left, yeah. Yeah, I'm just excited, because like some of the other shows that are like within the horror/science fiction fantasy vein that I'm waiting to come back. I'm waiting for Westworld season 4 is coming, which I love, and I'm waiting for His Dark Materials season 3, which is going to be the final.
I still need to watch that.
Oh, you do? It is such a good show. I mean,
it's on my list.
My wife loves the books. I never read the books.
Yeah, I haven't
do
either.
Sort of, kind of have a little soft spot for the 2005 Golden Compass movie with Nicole Kidman, even though I know it's nothing special. But I love the idea of a multiverse in any shape or form, and I really love the way that HBO did it. And plus, I love the fact that Lin-Manuel Miranda's in that show. He is great on that show. I'm excited for the last season. I really, really am. But you also saw Ghostbusters Afterlife, Gina.
Yeah, it's finally on Stars. I wanted to go see it in theaters, and I just never got around to it.
I got to see it. I had to go see it in theaters.
So, like, about 3 or 4 years ago, I went on this whole, I'm going to watch stuff that I should have watched before now. So I watched all the Ghostbusters for the first time and enjoyed the first one. I don't really remember the other one. I watched all the Star Wars films. I watched all the Fast and Furious films. I watched all of the Lord of the Rings films. Like, I just went on a journey of, like, pop culture that I never watched as a kid and just watched them all. And so I was pretty excited for this one, and I really liked it. I was loving it so much. I'm like, oh man, this has got to be, people have to have loved this. And then I get on Letterboxd and it has like an average of like 2.8 or something. Like, it is really low. Like, I guess I get it. Like, I don't have the nostalgia, so like
it's a whole other can of worms, Gina. It goes back to the 2016 Ghostbusters film.
Yeah, I haven't watched that one yet.
That's the thing. My wife and I went to see that one in theaters with expectations that, because we like the cast. I see. I had no issues with an all-female Ghostbusters cast, but I don't know if everybody in this room would agree or disagree with me, but this is what my wife said. I said, the Ghostbusters Afterlife plot, if that plot was in the 2016 Ghostbusters film, like if it was just Ghostbusters 3, nobody would have complained. Like if Kristen Wiig's character was like Dan Aykroyd's niece or something like that, Ray Stance's niece, nobody would have complained about this movie. The problem was that movie tried to reinvent the wheel. They tried to reboot it, and and unfortunately, it's a talented cast that is so underused. Melissa McCarthy, I remember her in Bridesmaids. For crying out loud, she got nominated for a fucking Oscar for that role because she was so damn funny. Kristen Wiig, she's funny. Leslie Jones, Kate McKinnon, they're funny, but you give them a crap script with nothing to work with, and that's what you get. And that's what really angered me about that movie. It was not that I had anything against women. I just have something against bad movies. So Ghostbusters Afterlife is a fun movie.
It is.
Because
the plot is really cool. The fact that they like don't know that they're his grandkid, like it was fun. I really enjoyed it.
It was Ghostbusters 3. That's all the fans wanted. It didn't matter who was
pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, that little thing that happens at the end that really hits the nostalgia strings. We don't want to ruin it if you guys haven't seen it yet, but you guys, if you love the original 2 Ghostbusters films, Ghostbusters Afterlife is a movie you're going to have a good time with, because it really captures why everybody loves those 2 80s classics.
It was a lot of fun.
And also because of the fact that Ivan Reitman's son directed it, and the fact that it was a great tribute to his dad.
Nice.
Yeah. That actually took a lot out of me, I gotta admit. Okay, let's get the elephant in the room out. Ladies, Top Gun Maverick, go for it.
Oh my god, it was so freaking good. I don't even know where to start. So I want to say though, I don't like the comparison of comparing this to the first one in terms of which one is better, because I still think that the original stands on its own 2 feet, despite what Steve says. He doesn't get a say here. No, I'm just messing with you, Steve.
Not everybody has to like
I
everything.
love the original from what it is. No, I get it. It's fine, 80s hater. But anyway, so this movie is fantastic. It is beautiful in all regards, but it stands on its own 2 feet. Like, it gave enough of a nod to yesteryear. So if you are coming at this after having seen the original, or even if you've just seen the original once, I think that you will get the nostalgia of this. But there is just such beauty in what they did with Maverick's character. For the first time, I feel like a sequel did well because they didn't try to euthanize the main character. They let him be what he would be today. He's aged. He's dealing with his life from this age perspective. He's coming to the realization his career is coming to an end. Technology is changing. The Navy is changing. Where does he see himself, in 10 years in terms of relationships? We all know that, when we saw him in the 80s, he was kind of a playboy. So there's that dynamic of it, the rom-com thing. But then you see this whole awesome cast of these young Top Gun graduates coming in with a new mission, and it just gives you this sense of pride. And these kids are hungry and they're excited to be taught by the best of the best, that is Maverick. And Maverick really does pay homage to the guys that were in his class with him. We hear a lot about Goose. Obviously, we see Goose's son in this film. Rooster is just amazing, and the dynamic that comes together for that relationship is tears, let me tell you. And I will tell you right now that the genuine camaraderie between Iceman and Maverick in that moment, there was no acting. That was real. That was genuine respect for each other, for where they've come from, for what Val has to face. And the way they wrote his character's storyline was just so touching and so honoring, and so it was full of so much pride. I mean, they gave him such an amazing, just a very stoic character, you know, someone that you genuinely you love, you know, and you didn't necessarily love Iceman to begin with. He was just kind of an asshole, but you love him in this film. Your heart breaks for him and his wife and his family, and in the same breath, you have all the respect in the world for him. So I think I might have kind of spoiled it for you in that moment. Stacey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say something because I know you haven't seen it yet. I don't think I totally killed it though. I think you will love it for what it's worth. I'm horrible at spoiling things. Just don't let me talk about shit you haven't seen because I'm bad. I don't know how to keep things bottled up, but no, I cannot say enough things about this movie in terms of the positivity. It will get all of your nostalgia going. It will give all of the pop culture junkies a buzz. It will sing to your heart. The music is really good, despite what you may have heard, because I heard it had a really shitty music line. And I will say the very first time Jennifer Connelly comes on scene on set, pay attention to the music in the background and you tell me if you catch what they did there, because
I
I
can't wait.
like got teary-eyed there too. I'm sorry.
I said I can't wait. I just cannot wait. Like I'm dying. I'm literally dying on the
I
inside.
mean,
I need to see it.
the music is all the right places at all the right times and all the right feels, and I can't wait till this comes out on DVD. I cannot wait to own it. I cannot wait to watch it again. It will make you just feel so awesome inside. It's just exactly what I needed, and I'm so glad I watched it on Memorial Day weekend because all the Americana vibes were there. You were like, hell yeah. It was great. It was so good.
Oh,
I'm still trying to figure out where you come off of me being an 80s hater. I'm still like hung up on that. Just because I just didn't appreciate one 80s movie does not make me that kind of a person. I'm sorry.
Sometimes once is all it takes. Maybe
Sorry,
I
just didn't look. I saw the original Top Gun and I didn't get it. End of story. I have nothing against people who love that movie. I just didn't get it. I love Danger Zone till the day I die, but I just didn't get the movie. I didn't. I tried. But, 80s, I did actually watch Chippendale's Rescue Rangers on Disney Plus. And
It's so good.
When I saw the trailer for it, I was like, no.
Right.
You can't do this to me. But then you get the second trailer, and then you start to see a little bit more of what they're trying to do. I'm like, okay, maybe this might be something that I'm interested in. And I watched it, and I was like, okay,
it's so cute.
Good.
It gave me Roger Rabbit vibes.
This was the spiritual sequel to Who Framed Roger Rabbit to me.
Definitely.
But what I love so much about this movie being a Disney movie and being where Disney is right now in the public eye, this movie took a massive dump on corporate Hollywood, and I loved that they did that. I loved that.
I watched it, and then as I was watching it, scrolling through Facebook, I started seeing stuff about Ugly Sonic, and I'm like, ooh, I'm real glad I didn't see this before I watched the movie, because that was fun. I didn't realize they were going to put Ugly Sonic in it.
There were you gotta keep your eyes open, because there are cameos that are going to blow your mind in this movie, and they're going to make you laugh. That's one of the few things I did not expect to do. I was so shocked that I laughed as much as I did. Also, I loved the fact that they did get Tress MacNeille back to voice Gadget. But I also appreciated the fact that the rest of the cast was not necessarily a major focal point of the movie, and it really was about Chip and Dale. And I loved that. I was surprised. I was very surprised by how much I enjoyed that movie.
Me too.
I would love to get that movie on DVD if it comes out, because I would totally buy it. Is anyone going to say anything?
I haven't seen it.
It's cute. It's very cute.
I have nothing to say. I haven't seen it either.
Okay.
It's worth the watch.
I think so. It was a big surprise for me. Kevin, you also still watching The Flight Attendant? Trying to do the voice of the show.
So the flight attendant was good. I honestly think that this will be the finality of that show because it really did finish all the storylines. You kind of figured out where all the characters were going, where they had been, why they had done what they had done. Kaylee Cuoco just pulls out all the stops in this one. She's very emotional and very raw in this particular season. And I think it was worth watching. I don't think it had all of the same pizzazz as the first one, but you know, as they say, the first one is always the best. But for me, the importance of this was to button up all those open-ended storylines. So I think that if you were a fan of the first season, you definitely want to tune in for the second season. And all I'm gonna say is Sharon fucking Stone. Holy shit.
There you go.
That's it. Amazing.
There you go. So I started watching 2 new shows on HBO. I believe one of them is only exclusive to HBO Max, but the other one is actually on HBO. And I would recommend them to anybody who is interested in these specific topics. The first show that I watched was Winning Time: The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty. That show interested me right off the bat because even though, you know, what should I really be doing right now instead of talking to you guys? Gina knows I should be sitting in front of my TV watching the Ranger game right now, but I'm not doing that. But I love sports history. I'm a big fan of sports history. So Winning Time is basically the story of Dr. Jerry Buss, the famous man who bought the LA Lakers in 1979, decided to go after a young phenom called Magic Johnson to join the Lakers with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and do one thing, and that was take the Lakers to the championship. It was an interesting cast. John C. Reilly, Sally Field. Okay. Cammie, is everything okay? Oh no. Did we lose her? Damn it. Anyway, I'm going to ask a question to the remaining. There we go. Everything all right, Cammie?
Yeah, I had to let the dog out. So if that happens, I'm hearing you, I'm just muting.
Okay.
So sorry. I should have forewarned you.
That's okay. So yeah, so John C. Reilly, Sally Field. Okay, you ready for a big nostalgic moment? Anyone in this movie ever seen Now and Then?
I don't think so.
Gabby Hoffman is in this show.
Ooh, nice.
She's great. I was just so interested in the story because I really wanted to see how the Lakers got to where they were. And what I'm really excited about is there's definitely going to be a second season because I think they're going to be taking us through the 80s. So we're going to see the big rivalry between Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, which is very, very exciting to me. I'd like to see if they're going to do anything like maybe say there's a young phenom showing up in Chicago named Michael Jordan. Who knows what they're going to do with the show? But the first season was very interesting. It was directed by Adam McKay, who directed The Big Short, who is one of my favorite directors. I love that movie. So knowing that he directed the show got me very excited to watch it. The other show that I watched that I will recommend to anybody is Julia, which is the story of Julia Child creating her legendary cooking show in 1962, The French Chef. Frasier fans in the room, David Hyde Pierce and Bebe Neuwirth are on this show, and they are fan-fucking-tastic. Julia was a delightful watch. I loved it so much. It was so cute. It was so funny. And there was a moment in that show that I like said, wow, that is perfect writing. Basically, there was a day where Julia Child was invited to New York City to get an award, and she ended up having a conversation with a feminist person. And of course, this is in the 1960s when the feminist movement is really starting to take shape and move forward. And she bashes Julia Child for doing what she's doing because she's saying that you are setting women back where they should be going out and getting jobs. And it crushes her spirit. So she goes out into the lobby of the hotel, and all of a sudden a man sits down next to her And I'm like saying to myself, no, it couldn't be. And so she goes, I don't know why this person doesn't like me. And the guy says, well, I like you. In fact, I like you just the way you are. And so she goes, my name is Julie. He goes, my name is Fred. I'm like, oh my God, they brought Mr. Rogers. Like, oh, that's beautiful. That was exactly what that show needed at that very moment. And it made me so happy to see that. Because you have to remember, she was in, her show was picked up by the second channel that made public broadcasting television. He was in Pittsburgh and she was in Boston. So I highly recommend Julia. It is such a great show, and I'm really hoping that it comes back for a second season.
It's high on my radar. I just haven't had time to sit down and divulge into it, but it just looks so much fun.
It's a great.
Sounds
And
great.
David Hyde Pierce and Baby Newirth, I mean, as a Frasier fan, what I love so much about Baby Newirth, going all the way back to when she was on Cheers, she's not the main character. And she knows that the show is not about her, so she knows when to take the step back. But when the spotlight is on her and it's time for her to shine, oh my God, she steals every second that she is on screen beautifully. She is so funny on that show. I highly recommend it. I think it's one of the best shows that I've watched in 2022, actually. Let's see here. So, Cammie, you are talking about the last episode of Ozark. This is a show that I know so many people love and I just haven't watched.
So last time you were absent and the girls and I just got together, I told them I felt really bad because I had watched everything up until the last episode and it was already on and I just hadn't had time to watch it before we recorded. And so I promised them that I would watch it and I did, and it's everything that I expected that it would be. I'm very sad that the show has ended because I have fully dedicated myself to 4 seasons of Ozark. I loved it with everything in me because I have a huge crush on Jason Bateman and he is probably just the sweetest person, but his comedic beat is something so unique. I mean, he just knows how to be serious and funny all in the same breath. And the cast was probably one of the best casts I have seen in a television show. So it ended in a very obvious way because there's only a couple of ways that certain characters could have went. It was heartbreaking though, because you were genuinely rooting for certain characters to be more than what their fate was, but I loved it and I just wanted to come back and say that I did finish it and I was very happy with the way that it ended, but I'm also very sad that it's gone because I really became very connected to that show. It's something that I genuinely looked forward to and it's been a while since I've had a show like that. So
I
if
agree
you
with
haven't
you.
seen it and you like, well, if you like drug cartel and just kind of off the cuff kind of shows, stuff like Weeds and stuff like that, I think you would really enjoy this.
Well, I agree with
It's
you
on my
about
list.
Jason. I agree with you about Jason Bateman because I think Cammie and I think Stacy and I a long time ago talked about Bad Words. That was a funny movie.
Yeah.
Jason Bateman is so underrated as a comedian.
I will say that one of the best comedies that came out in the 21st century is Horrible Bosses. That is one of the funniest movies that I have. Forget about the sequel. The sequel's terrible.
Yeah.
The first one is fantastic. Not just because of the fact that he is brilliant, but the fact that Colin Farrell, Kevin Spacey, and Jennifer Aniston give us performances that we've never seen before. The fact that Jennifer Aniston plays a nympho dentist is still something that makes me laugh to this very day because she never played that kind of a role before.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I love her in
but I
other
think
space, but
that's what I was just about to say. I think Jennifer Aniston is also not regarded in the same light when she has comedic roles, because in Office Space she was phenomenal, and I think that really again highlighted it for us in Horrible Bosses. What was that one that she also did where she was in an RV with 2 kids that weren't even hers? What was that movie?
Was it the Where the Mitchells or Where the Millers or something like that?
Yes.
The Millers.
She was fantastic in that too. So I
And
think
not just
she's,
that.
I mean, of course we saw her at like a comedic side of her in Friends, but I don't think they gave her the platform because we kind of expected Rachel to be a certain way, and she kind
Yeah.
of became this entity. But when you see Jen on the stage in a comedy role, she just lights it up, and she's funny, very, very funny. So her chemistry with Jason Bateman is spot on. Just
And
it's magic on screen.
And people also forget the fact that she was also in Leprechaun.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that she had a
Speaking of
little
which,
bit
Kelly,
in
are
in
you
a
getting the
horror.
Leprechaun Funko Pops?
Heck yes, I am.
I had a feeling you would. Okay, so Gina, you wrote something here. I don't know what this is. What the heck is senior year? Please enlighten me.
Senior Year is the new Rebel Wilson movie on Netflix,
I
where
like
her
her.
senior.
I like her in Pitch Perfect. She's really funny in Pitch Perfect.
I like her in some things. Don't get me started on Cats.
I won't.
So Senior Year is a Netflix movie where her senior year of high school, the beginning of it's all, how she's this nerd going into high school, and she's like, I'm gonna become a popular kid, and so she ends up becoming one of the popular kids and ends up being the cheer captain her senior year of high school. And the other popular kids like don't like her or whatever, and so they kind of like essentially throw the performance, and she falls and goes into a coma. She's in this coma for 20 years, and then when she gets out, she's still 17 in her mind, but in reality she's almost a 40-year-old woman. And so her best friend is like the principal of the high school, so she talks her into letting her finish out the last month of high school for her, so she can actually get her diploma and not have to like get a GED and stuff, because she's like, I'm still 17, and it's not good.
Wow, it was probably great the first time you saw it when it was 13 going on 30.
Right. That was fine. That was well. It's very cringy. The music is great. It's very 90s nostalgia. The ending is pretty good. The ending actually does do a really good job of having a really good like message and stuff, and like it almost feels like it's trying to be an 80s teen movie with the cringe and everything. I wasn't gonna watch it because it looks very cringy, but I saw a clip on Facebook where they essentially recreated one of the Britney Spears videos.
Oh, God.
And it was like really fun, so like, okay, fine, I'll watch it. So the nostalgia was fun. Like I said, it has a good message towards the end, like characters that you think are going to be completely bitchy and like rude characters turn out to surprise you. And like, because it is 2022, these high schoolers have different ideas and are like more mature than high schoolers from the 80s, because we have like the internet, and so they're like, no, I'm not going to be that bully that my mother wants me to be, kind of deal. And so like stuff that I thought was going to happen didn't, and I really enjoyed that. So I ended up really liking the like final third of the movie.
Okay.
But overall it's very cringy. I don't recommend watching it.
Well, one of the things that I definitely wanted to touch on is something that I know that Cammie's going to appreciate, because we've already talked about Tom Cruise today. And another thing that we also need to do is we do need to pay tribute to the late Ray Liotta, because he unfortunately did pass away this weekend. And I wanted to do that completely by accident because I did watch a movie with Tom Cruise that also was directed by Martin Scorsese. So even though I'm not a fan of Top Gun, I do have my share of Tom Cruise movies from the 80s that I truly do enjoy. I love Risky Business, and I really like him in The Outsiders, even though he has such a minor role. But I finally saw The Color of Money, and that is a sequel to the Paul Newman classic, The Hustler, which is an excellent movie. It was good. The Color of Money was good. I can totally see why Paul Newman finally got his Oscar for that role. But one of the few things that I am learning about myself is that I am not a fan of Martin Scorsese films before 1990. It's like every movie that he has directed before Goodfellas, I'm like, it's okay. Because like I've seen Mean Streets, Taxi, The King of Comedy, The Color of Money. I've seen all these movies, and I'm just like, I don't like them as much as I like Goodfellas, Wolf of Wall Street, Silence. Those are all incredible films. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, Goodfellas was basically Scorsese's game changer. And that's basically like I will always say, and I know you're a fan of The Godfather, Kemi, and so am I, but I still say that there's something about Goodfellas that makes it a little bit better than The Godfather, at least for me. I think it's just because of the fact that Scorsese brings the fun into the mob life. Whereas Godfather, while it's fantastic, it's just so serious. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's the difference between them, because with Goodfellas, you do get that humorous side of them. You kind of get to look on the inside and see how the camaraderie is between them and just kind of all the shenanigans that kind of go on. With The Godfather, it is intended to be very dramatic and
it's great.
Very serious, give you the heavy hitting things. I disagree with you though on Scorsese's, films prior to the 90s, because I think that he's a very unique filmmaker, and
no
he's
doubt.
probably one of my all-time top 3 favorites. So I don't tend to criticize him a lot because I enjoy his eye. I enjoy the way he brings things to the table. But mind you, there are Scorsese films that I am not a fan of. The Wolf of Wall Street is one of those. That is just a shit movie. It's just a freaking orgy, and it's disgusting, and I hate it. And if I never have to see it with my naked eyes again, it will be too soon, because
I will say, the better version of that story, the Jordan Belfort story, is Boiler Room. Have you seen Boiler Room?
I have watched Boiler Room probably more times than I can count, and it's one of my absolute favorites.
I adore Boiler Room.
The cast, I cannot speak highly of that, any more highly of that film. I absolutely love it. But I think for me, the star of that, there's some phenomenal actors, but Giovanni Ribisi is just a spot on.
Love him in that movie.
From start to finish, he's just perfection.
Oh yeah, him and Nicky Cat and Jamie Kennedy and Nia Long, Vin Diesel. It's a Scott Conn. It's such a great cast, and it's so upsetting that movie is like off of so many people's radars, because it's like everybody loves Oliver Stone's Wall Street, and that's a great movie, by the way. That's like Michael Douglas's greatest movie ever made. But Boiler Room, it's just so much fun. It's so much fun to watch these guys doing what they're doing,
Yeah, no, and I guess that's kind of what I went into The Wolf of Wall Street hoping, that I was going to get like an updated Boiler Room. I had no idea that this guy was an actual person, that this storyline existed. And it was such a crass film, and maybe that was his real life, but I just had such a hard time digesting all of this bullshit that it was. I'm like, okay, is enough? Every character was so over the top, and his life was so over the top. And don't get me wrong, I love DiCaprio, but it was just so muchness.
And
speaking of DiCaprio, the other Scorsese film that I freaking hate is The Departed. That is just a
you don't like that one.
Bullshit.
You don't like that one.
I hate it. It's a phenomenal cast too, but I've tried so much so. Check this stupid shit out. So much so, I have actually accidentally bought the movie twice, thinking I haven't seen it, only to be disappointed again and again. Like, how stupid is that?
And yet that movie won Best Picture.
Why? I don't get it. No, it's horrible. It's just stupid.
Well, again, I liked The Color of Money. I didn't love it. I thought Tom Cruise and Paul Newman together had amazing chemistry. It was the perfect movie to show, heartthrob of Hollywood's past meets heartthrob of Hollywood's future in a movie together. It's a great idea, from a movie making perspective. And it's also nice to know that Scorsese was the one that wanted to make the sequel from a movie because that was a time in the 80s when movies were being made and people never thought of a sequel coming out such a long time after its predecessor. The Godfather 3 would only show up a few years later, but that was something that you didn't see often. And if you're going to do it like that, and there you go, Maverick is a perfect example, you got to get the right team on board in order to make sure that it does well. Same thing with Ghostbusters Afterlife. You got to get the right people who have the passion for these stories to bring these characters back that you know and love. And, you know, Goodfellas, you know, anything that another television show could take, like Animaniacs makes Good Feathers, you know, that's why I love Goodfellas so much. And that's why I love Ray Liotta so much. And I love the fact that his last movie was The Sopranos prequel. You know, I'm loving the fact that he got the opportunity to be in that movie. And I love the fact that
movie.
And I love the fact that both he and Lorraine Bracco are now both attached to The Sopranos.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, they had a beautiful relationship, working relationship, and it was very heartbreaking. But I think the most touching tribute to Ray Liotta was done by Kevin Costner. It brought me to tears. I was just blown away by what he said, and I don't think anybody can top that. It was perfection.
So
it's just a very short little, you know, area.
Okay, so Stacey, you saw two movies that have been around for a while now. I want to know which Great Gatsby movie you're referring to. Are you referring to the Tobey Maguire one, Leonardo DiCaprio one, or the Robert Redford one?
Leonardo DiCaprio. For some reason,
like that one.
I'd never seen it. I'd never seen it before. I read the book in high school, and my daughter just read the book, and so she wanted to see the movie, and I loved it. And I'm not surprised because I love Baz Luhrmann and I didn't know that he directed it. I was like, why did I not watch this movie when it came out? And now I'm super excited for the Elvis movie. I didn't know that Baz was making an Elvis
for that.
Yes, I am so excited for the Elvis movie, even though I won't be seeing it in theater.
Good.
It's gonna go. It's a Warner Brothers film, so it will be on HBO Max. I cannot wait to see that movie because
that's good to know because I don't think I'll be able to see it in theaters either.
There should have been they should have made a biopic about Elvis years ago.
Well, if Baz is doing it, it's going to be perfection because
and Tom Hanks is in it.
With cinematography and the music, like there's nothing like it. There is nothing like it.
The trailers are so engaging, and as a music appreciator, and like I wrote on the list that there were so many music that I had so many new albums that I was listening to, but I'm not going to get into them. But I will say that if you are Weezer or Fuel fans, there are new albums out there, and they actually
the Weezer album's really good.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's going to be 4 albums picturing one season of the year, so I have to pick up spring already. But I didn't even know that Fuel made a new album called Anomaly last year, so I finally got my hands on it. I fucking love it. It's so great because I loved Fuel when I was in college. So I saw them twice in concert, which was awesome. But yeah, the Baz Luhrmann Great Gatsby movie, I haven't seen it since I went to see it in theaters, but I remember really enjoying it. I really did.
The cinematography alone, like I was so engaged and couldn't look away from the screen because it was so beautiful.
Yeah, he knows how to do that. I mean, I haven't seen Moulin Rouge, but that movie looks fucking gorgeous.
What?
You need to watch it.
You've got to watch Moulin Rouge. Oh my god,
so good. I haven't seen it in years. I want to rewatch it.
It's so good. I did see Romeo and Juliet, by the way. I did see that.
I watched that one probably at least every 6 months. I love Romeo and Juliet, and his depiction of it is phenomenal. And it has 2 of the best soundtracks that ever came off of a movie.
Yes, Cammie. Absolutely. 100%. Romeo and Juliet soundtrack. 90s. That's 90s in a nutshell.
I remember that movie, but I never saw Miss Potter.
If you want the most feel-good, delightful time ever, watch Miss Potter. It is the life of Beatrix Potter when she is becoming, an author, and she's drawing her little bunnies, and they are like, what is it? It's like Roger Rabbit, like the little bunnies that she's drawing are coming alive on the screen, and it's Renee Zellweger plays Beatrix Potter. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's so heartwarming. I loved it so much. When like the world's going to shit, right? And you're seeing the news and you're like, everything is awful. Put that movie on. It's delightful.
Well, that's the thing. In recent years, I've been watching a lot of movies that feature the lives of authors. Like I watched Tolkien, starring Nicholas Hoult, and I really did enjoy that movie. But I also will tell so many people, ironically, Nicholas Hoult is also in this other one, Rebel in the Rye, which is about oh Jesus Christ, J.D. Salinger, and he plays J.D. Salinger, and Kevin Spacey plays the guy who inspired him to write Catcher in the Rye. I personally thought that was a brilliant film, and more people need to see it.
Ewan McGregor is in Miss Potter.
There you go.
And, oh, my heart. You have to watch it. It's I cried. It was so beautiful. I cried.
So I also watched the best film of 1987. It was a movie that I wanted to watch for many, many years. I finally watched The Last Emperor. That movie was fucking fantastic. I was blown away by this film. And it's such an appropriate time to watch it now because China's in the news right now. It was so interesting to see the story of the very last emperor of China and watch him literally have to be forced to give up his emperorship for the communist revolution. It was such an interesting story to see.
That sounds good.
It reminded me of another movie that I wanted to see for so many years, and I finally saw it, and that was Memoirs of a Geisha, and I really liked that movie because I don't really know or see too much about Far East Asian culture like Japan and Korea and China, and for me, it's so interesting to see these countries go through such a change from their classic traditions and then going into the 1900s and seeing them get modernized so quickly in the blink of an eye. It's unbelievable to see these old traditions like be thrown to the curb for modernization in wartime and then coming up from the ashes from everything that happened during wartime. It's so interesting to watch. And to see this young boy become the emperor of China only to be told you are not the emperor anymore, even though they're like trying to shelter him from the outside world and what's going on. He had no idea that he was no longer the emperor, yet he was still being treated like the emperor. And then to see him go through his life until he's finally caught by the Chinese government to the point where he actually dies. Like, it's such a sad story, but it's brilliantly directed and it's gorgeous to watch. I'm so glad that I finally saw this movie because it really is what I thought it was going to be. It was really well done.
I've only seen it once, but I was much younger and I do visually remember it.
It's gorgeous.
That child just vividly sticks out to you. Yes, the cinematography is breathtaking.
Yeah. And I did revisit two movies because they were celebrating their anniversaries. I watched Superbad for the first time in years. That movie is so stupid, but it's funny as hell. I love it. I am not a fan of Seth Rogen. I will be perfectly honest about that. Though, there's a great Seth Rogen joke in the Rescue Rangers movie.
Yep.
but I love him in Freaks and Geeks. That's like my favorite role that he was ever in. But him and Bill Hader as the cops in Superbad is one of the best two characters in film history. Like, those two are basically like everything that you love about buddy comedies, and they always give me the best line when they're shooting the stop sign with McLovin, and all of a sudden they hear sirens, and Seth Rogen screams out, "Jesus Christ, it's the cops!" I'm like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me.
I don't typically like slapstick comedy like that, but I don't know what it is about Superbad, but the one-liners in that movie have stuck with me for years. I will find myself just saying them for no apparent reason. I'll be getting that for sure. I'll be getting that for sure.
It's all about McLovin. That's all about. That's the reason why everybody went to see that movie, because everybody saw that whole thing about McLovin in the trailer. Like, everyone went to see it because of McLovin. It was hilarious.
Mhm.
Now, but, and I completely forgot that Emma Stone is in that movie. Oh my god!
Yeah.
No, my
Fantastic.
favorite
No,
line.
it's stupid, but it's wonderful. I
No,
loved it. I still think it's timeless.
I mean the dirtiest line is my favorite line is when Jonah Hill yells out, "She wants my dick in and around her mouth." I'm like, oh my god, that is just so funny. And the other movie that I actually watched, I still cannot get over the fact that this movie is 20 years old and I saw it in theaters. I rewatched the Powerpuff Girls movie. I love that movie to death. It is adorable. I can't wait for my daughter to be old enough to watch these little cartoons, and I want her to watch that movie with me because I think that she will absolutely love it. It also is the 27th anniversary of cartoons on Cartoon Network. Can you believe that?
Really? Wow.
Oh, I'm old. Thanks.
Yeah, I still remember when what a cartoon show was on. We were all introduced to the Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny
Yep.
Bravo, Cow and Chicken. We were also introduced to a young man named Seth MacFarlane who would eventually create Family Guy. So, oh yeah, and Courage the Cowardly Dog. I forgot that they were on that he was on that show too. Unbelievable. But the Powerpuff Girls movie is awesome. So many pop culture references, so much fun to watch, so full of action, and I love the ladies that voice the Powerpuff Girls. I mean, I'm a big Tara Strong fan. I love her as Bubbles. I do.
I don't know that I've ever seen that one. I watched the cartoon, but I don't think I've ever.
You would, Tammy, of all people in this room besides me, I'm surprised you didn't see it because that's right up your alley. It's the Powerpuff Girls origin story too, which makes it really, really cute. But you really got to watch it carefully because you're going to know pop culture references.
I feel like I saw
I
it,
wasn't a big
but I don't. I can't remember it.
I didn't.
I love it.
So I was really into Powerpuff Girls, but so I feel like I probably have watched it, but I don't remember.
And it's so funny.
I think that's why I didn't gravitate to it because I wasn't a regular watcher of the Powerpuff Girls cartoon. Like I watched all the other ones you just mentioned, but I never was a regular watcher. So I don't think it just was a, I must see this kind of thing, but I did grow to love them later. So I'm sure if I visited it after having seen some episodes, I'd probably love it.
My favorite episode of the Powerpuff Girls is the one that spoofs the Beatles. That is my favorite episode of that show. So it's so funny because this specific actor has actually come up in conversation with my wife this weekend. So what's gotten you back head over heels over Will Wheaton, Tammy? Tell me.
It was a total mistake. So I've always loved Will Wheaton. I don't love his political side. I mean, that's a story for another day. Yeah. But I got interested because he has a new book. I think it just came out. I don't know if it's just some arcs that are floating out there, but it's based off of a book that he released in the like mid 90s called Just a Geek. And so the new one is yellow and it's still Just a Geek is what the title of that is. So of course, being the nerd that I am, I'm like, oh, so if it's called still Just a Geek, I need to find the original. So I went and hunted down this book and it sent me down a Will Wheaton spiral. And then I accidentally bought this movie, which Stacey says she's seen it. I have not watched it yet, but I found myself just buying a whole bunch of VHS that Will Wheaton. And so now I have like a shit ton of Will Wheaton to watch. So next month I will just probably gush over Will Wheaton because I'm going to also pick up his new book. And so yeah, I feel like I got slapped in the face with Will Wheaton, and here we are.
Yeah.
So it was by
I'm gonna have to look into those books, especially if he narrates them himself. If he narrates a book, I'm.
Oh, yes, that's why everybody loves the audiobook of Ready Player One.
That is the thing. I'm so glad you mentioned that though, Gina, because he narrates this one.
Good.
But his new one, Still Just a Geek, he only narrates the introduction. It is narrated by another man that I swoon over when he speaks, Neil Gaiman.
Okay.
Why would you not narrate your own book? Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know. I love Bill Gaines.
Especially since he narrates other
Wow.
books. Like, interesting. Okay.
That's crazy. Wow. Okay, let's go. Let's continue to go down the nostalgia train because we still have a whole bunch of things. So, Gina, you're still watching Supernatural. You're still
Yeah.
enjoying it?
So I don't remember where I was at last month. Season 2, I think. I am now mid-season 6. I have slowed down. I have hit the point where Sam is starting to very Dean himself. I don't like him in Gilmore Girls as Dean, and his character in season 6 is starting to remind me of that, and I'm like, no thank you. But season 5 is where we get a lot of the like themed episodes. I wish I had written them down because I don't really remember exactly. I haven't hit the Scooby-Doo episode yet. I'm still waiting to hit that. But season 5 was fantastic just because there's so many like one-liners and like funny things within everything. I really enjoyed it. So I'm still liking it. I'm still working my way through season 6. I've gotten to the halfway point of season 6 where he goes back to being himself. And so he's not a douchebag. So it should get better.
How far are you in Batman the Animated Series at this point in time, Cammy?
I am working my way through season 2 and I am loving it because, as I had stated earlier, I did not appreciate it as a teen. Obviously, my brain was in a million other places as a teen, so now I'm looking at it through the adult lens, and I'm really vesting myself in like the character development. So I'm really understanding Catwoman and the Penguin, characters that were always there in the forefront, but I never really gave them the time of day because other characters to me were much cooler, like Two-Face. I'm just enthralled with Two-Face and his whole backstory, but I'm really taking each episode and just kind of dissecting it. And so for me, I'm getting so much more out of this, which has kind of catapulted my interest in finally getting to Superman the Animated
Yeah,
Series.
you gotta
And
check it
eventually
out.
I'll kind of, oh yeah, there's so much more that I have to visit. But yeah, I'm loving this, and I'm taking my time with it. I'm not rushing through it, which I think is another cool thing because I'm so accustomed to when something is available from start to finish, I'll just kind of binge watch it. Like Gina was saying earlier with Netflix, how they give it to us all in once, and now all of a sudden they're cheating us on the last 2 episodes. I'll bitch about something like that, but then when I have the whole thing, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to take my time. I'm going to do it episode by episode.
Yeah, I mean, I have been that's the funny thing because I've been watching 3 shows for the last couple of months and I'm still not finished with them. I'm still on season 4 of The Sopranos. I'm still on season 5 of Teen Titans, and I'm on season 5 of Spider-Man the Animated Series. Really shocked I never watched that when I was a kid because I loved Batman the Animated Series and Superman the Animated Series, and I loved X-Men. That was like my shit when I was a
X-Men
kid.
was amazing.
Loved X-Men the Animated Series. Also, I will not deny that I liked X-Men Evolution in 2003. I really liked that show. But Spider-Man the Animated Series is just as fun as X-Men. It's got so many fan favorite villains. He teams up with so many different other heroes. The X-Men showed up in the series already. Daredevil showed up in the series. It's a lot of fun. And I always love the fact that much like Batman, he's got such a rogues gallery. And it's just like, how can this kid handle all of these baddies? It's just absolutely phenomenal to me. And you mentioned season 6 of a show, Gina. I'm on season 6 of The Simpsons. I am rewatching The Simpsons right now. And I am just, there are certain television shows, even if I watch them hundreds of times, if I could still pop an episode of The Simpsons on and still laugh as hard as I did when I first watched that episode, that just shows you how great that show was. And here's a fun fact about me. I was banned from that show when I was a kid. My mom thought that Bart Simpson was a terrible influence. I watched the first 3 episodes when I was in 3rd grade, and my mom did not let me watch that show again. I wasn't allowed to watch that show again until season 6 when I was going into my last year of elementary school. And the reason why I was allowed to watch it because she found out that my aunt, her twin sister, was letting her son, who was 4 years younger than me, watch The Simpsons. So she suddenly felt a little weird saying, wow, I'm not letting my son, who is 4 years older than my sister's son, watch The Simpsons. Maybe I'll let him watch it. So season 6 has some of the greatest episodes. The Stonecutters episode with Patrick Stewart is one of my all-time favorite episodes. The song in that episode is so cute. I sing it to my daughter. That's how much I love that song. To put her to sleep, I sing the Stonecutter song to my daughter, and my wife thinks I'm out of my mind. But So Gina, I really liked what you wrote on the list because you wrote "Because I'm Star Wars now."
I'm a Star Wars now.
It's funny because when I was a little kid, I used to think that Star Wars was the greatest series of films ever made. Going into my 40s now and watching a whole bunch of different kinds of movies going all the way back to the 1920s, I'm like saying to myself, why did I think Star Wars was hot again? Like, what was it about these movies that were so... Star Wars is not what it used to be for me. And I've watched the shows on Disney Plus now that I have Disney Plus, so I've been binging them. Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett were okay. I appreciated the atmosphere.
Boba Fett needed more Boba Fett.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. But
Boba Fett is Mandalorian 2.5.
I really appreciate the Western feel. I do like that, but it's really, to me, it's nothing special. Now, Clone Wars, on the other hand,
I love Clone Wars.
Wow,
That was great.
I love Clone Wars, and I love Rebels too.
I haven't been able to get into that as much.
Rebels gets better as it moves. Past season 1. The rest of the series is great.
I watched all the Star Wars movies for the first time 3 years ago. And then I watched Mandalorian and loved it. And then I met a bunch of online friends because of COVID, and I started talking to my one friend, Kevin, who DMs a Star Wars D&D campaign on Twitch, and it's based in the Clone Wars era. And so he had me watch Clone Wars, and being able to watch it and then have him give me trivia and like be able to explain things, I think is why I never really cared as much in the past, because it was just people yelling at me to watch Star Wars and no one actually taking the time to teach me about Star Wars. And so like Kev teaching me about Star Wars really kind of helped build my appreciation for Star Wars. So I don't know if you saw, Steve, I tweeted the other day, I was like, even a year ago, had you told me I'd be this excited to watch an Obi-Wan Kenobi show, I would have laughed in your face.
Well, I haven't watched it just yet.
It's good.
I need to finish watching The Bad Batch. Unfortunately,
Bad Batch is so good.
I tried to watch it, and unfortunately, I started watching it right around the time that I had to go to the hospital with my wife because we were having the baby. I fell asleep while I was watching it because I had to catch up on sleep. But the Bad Batch showed up in the last season of Clone Wars, and I really like it. What I find so interesting about the live-action shows is, to me, they're subliminally telling the people, go watch the animated shows, because...
Especially with Ahsoka coming out, because they're bringing in Rebels characters.
Not just Ahsoka. When Cad Bane shows up in Boba Fett, I'm like, wow! And not just that, the fact that Corey Burton still voices him.
Yep.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah,
Bad Batch is really good. I've watched Bad Batch twice.
Yeah, and it's like with Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Inquisitors, they're all from Star Wars Rebels. So it's like, you gotta watch Star Wars Rebels and you'll get all the references there. But yeah, I gotta watch the Bad Batch. I mean, I love Star Wars animation. I loved when I see Clone Wars. I went to see the movie, which is technically the pilot of the show, in theaters for my birthday. And the first season of Clone Wars, it's hard to get through.
It is.
You get past season 2, that show just opens up.
Yeah,
it's great. It really is great. And I'm still doing my comic book thing, as Cammie definitely knows. And Cammie, we're going to have to talk soon because we got to get back on That's Comical. We got to start doing some stuff. I'm reading some really cool books right now. I'm reading a book called Dark Knights of Steel, which is what if all the DC characters were in a medieval setting. That's pretty cool. It's very Game of Thrones-ish, which I really, really like. Then there's Batman, Superman, World's Finest, which is basically just a pure, fun Batman, Superman comic book. It's just too cool. Two comic books that I really want to recommend to all of you if you want to. Cammie, I have no idea if you are trying to get your hands on Alice Ever After yet.
Oh, I have them, and I've got pre-order on number 3.
What did you think of those first 2 issues? How crazy are they?
It was, well, I can never say I go into a world of Wonderland expecting anything because you never know what someone's take on Wonderland is going to be. But I will say that I was very happy with the product. So I think that should definitely be a future discussion because I'm very much looking forward to continuing.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to do a really cool idea. I am trying to get Andy and his wife and myself to do a buddy read of Lewis Carroll's book, which I still have yet to read for the very first time. And then I want to incorporate that comic book because the fact that Alice Ever After is the story of Alice basically turning into a drug addict in order to escape to Wonderland again. You want to talk about going dark? Wow, that comic goes dark. It's such a shame it's going to be only 5.
Well, and I think a lot of people forget about the video game. So that's basically...
I was going to ask you, is this darker than American McGee's Alice?
And I think that it could potentially go there, but no, I think McGee's Alice was very dark and very twisted. For goodness sakes, Alice wakes up in an insane asylum. She had just, attributed a house fire where she lost both of her parents, and that world is upside down, twisted as all get out. You have card guards that cut off your head literally in the game. So it is extremely dark and very morbid, and a lot of people also forget that Marilyn Manson was going to create that in live action form, kind of a combination with Phantasmagoria, and it just never happened. And it was really disheartening to me because I love the game. There's actually 2 of them. The first one came out, I want to say, in like 2001, and then the second part came out in like 03, 04, I believe. But yeah, I have all of the figures, the Alice McGee figures. That was probably my first like adult Alice thing, and I was so excited when I finished the card guards because that was one of the hardest things as a collector to get because they had different combinations of the card guards, and if you already possessed one, you had to find the other set with the different card. Oh my god, it was just mind-boggling.
I've seen them on display. Those figures are so creepy.
I'll have to showcase them when we have our discussion because they are some of the creepiest figures that I have in my Alice collection. And you've seen my Alice collection. It is probably one of the most extensive Alice in Wonderland collections I personally have ever seen. I've been collecting since I was 12.
And I'm really excited for Alice Ever After issue number 3 because that cover with the Cheshire Cat is uber creepy and I can't wait to see it up close. And the other book that I have to recommend is a book from Image Comics called Twig. So I was on the fence about it and I wasn't sure if I was going to get it or not, but then when I find out from some of the big names in the comic book community, one of them said Twig is like you read the first page and you feel like you just got transported to Fraggle Rock. And I was like, okay, I think I need to pick this book up. And I read Twig issue number 1 and I freaking loved it. I mean, there's a scene where he goes to a mountain with a face and the mountain's tongue opens up to give him a path into the mountain. And all I can think of is the trash heap from Fraggle Rock. I'm like laughing my head off because it's just so Jim Henson. I'm like, if Jim Henson wrote a comic book, this is what he would be writing. Scotty Young, I love his illustrations, but I've never actually seen much of what he writes. I love Twig, and I can't wait for issue number 2. And I want to close it out with Stacy because she watched a bunch of documentaries.
Yeah, for some reason I'm in a documentary kick this month, but I watched The Wild West, I think was on Amazon Prime. And I watched a documentary called Our Father about a fertility doctor that impregnated like 100 women and has 100 children. That was disturbing.
Yeah,
that was really hard.
That's on my list.
It was really good. You should watch it. But yeah, it was a hard watch. And then I watched 3 Mile Island, I think was on Netflix. That was really good. I learned a lot that I didn't know, and it made me hate the government even more than I already do. Like, I already distrust them and know they lie. Like, you watch that movie and it makes you ragey, or not movie, documentary, but you should, 3 Mile Island, especially you, Steve, being so close to it. Both of us were close to it, like Maryland and New York, because it happened in Pennsylvania. Right. You should watch it.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, I'm still watching episodes of The Food That Built America. I still have to watch some of the episodes with my wife, and there's still one that I have not watched yet. I'm still waiting for the new ones to show up. But anyway, guys, I think that's going to wrap it up. This was something that I desperately needed. Even though I love spending time with my wife and daughter, I needed to have an opportunity to speak to some other adults. Cammie, you and I will get in contact because, by the way, I did just recently have come in the mail Teen Titans Go and DC Superhero Girls. So I'm really excited to watch it, especially because of how much I love Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans. But we will set up a date to do our future recordings, and I'm really excited to come back again next month with all of you and have a great conversation. So everybody out there, I really hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please give us a like, leave us a comment. We'd love to talk to you. I love to talk to more adults as much as I possibly can right now. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're up to date with all of our latest content. Stacy, Cammie, Gina, so great. Thank you so much. This is exactly what I needed. And enjoy the rest of your evening, everybody. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video you just watched, feel free to leave a comment. Also, feel free to subscribe if you want to be up to date with our latest videos. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you in the next one. Actions speak louder than words.